This is PBS Reno Arts. I'm Dave Santina. Thank you for joining me, and I'm excited today. We have a really interesting program. Frances Melhop is with me. Frances has created unique art experiences since she abandoned the traditional gallery setting for a nomadic approach. Her latest exhibit is in the last place you might expect an art gallery to be, in the former Nevada State Prison building, and I'd love to hear about that. So thank you, Frances, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, this is exciting. So this exhibit is something I'd never have heard of before, and I'm really curious about it. So can you explain it's called Far Beyond the Walls, correct? Mm-hmm. And just if you could just lay out for anyone who's listening who's not heard of it, what is this exhibit?
This is an exhibit of many artists, actually. It's 7 solo shows and 2 group shows. And it is artists who are coming at the idea of mass incarceration or incarceration from different angles. So some of the artists are formerly incarcerated, some are currently incarcerated, and others are from various walks of life. For instance, Glenn Cartledge is a former criminal defense lawyer who actually worked in that prison. And she's an artist, and she's been collaborating with formerly incarcerated people to make her exhibition P2P, Prisoners to Paper Dolls, which are portraits of formerly incarcerated people. And so people are just, these artists that I found and researched are literally thinking about incarceration. They're thinking about enclosed spaces and confinement, and they're all very, very different.
And these exhibits are placed physically within the walls of this former prison. Mm-hmm. So you have to go to the prison to experience the exhibit, right?
Yeah, and it's still looked after by the Department of Corrections, so it's still functioning and secure as a prison, although there's no inmates in there now. So it's looked after by the Nevada State Prison Preservation Society.
Who knew there was such a thing?
And, they are looking after the historic building. They're doing an incredible job. They've just got like a big grant to fix the roof, which was leaking a lot in different places. And they were very on board when I asked them if it would be possible to stage an exhibition there. And I don't think they were thinking it was going to be as big as it is, but it sort of grew as I was doing the research.
Oh, how big is it? Does it encompass most of the buildings? It's a pretty large building, if I recall.
It's a very big building, and there's more buildings up the hill from the 80s prison era. But I've put the work into the historic building itself, which was built in 1862, and it was modified and modified and modified. Early on, it was actually a hot springs spa.
Really?
I mean, this place has had the most strange, the strangest history. A hot springs spa turns into a prison, turns into, it's very bizarre. There's even giant sloth footprints on the site, and saber-toothed tiger teeth embedded in the quarry wall that the prison was built from. So it's like endlessly had a history that is incredible.
That sounds amazing. So this place is a special location for a number of reasons.
Right. Well, and also it's part of the founding of the state of Nevada. So I think that originally, in order to found a state, you needed a governor and a prison. And those were your two kind of qualifying things, which is bizarre. But so it's actually, very integral to it's important as a historical monument as far as, this state is concerned as well. But to answer your other question, it is taking up a lot of space, the exhibition, and it's in different cell blocks. It's in maximum security. It's in a minimum security cell block. It's in the culinary section. It's in the infirmary section, and in the muster room. So it's in various parts of the prison, and as the prison is all completely locked up, each tour I have to open up each of the different sections and lead people through, otherwise they're just totally going to get lost.
Right. So you are the tour guide.
Yeah.
You're the curator. You're also the docent.
I'm the running juggler. Yeah.
So what's the experience for someone who comes to this exhibit?
Well, the responses have been astounding. People are literally speechless by the time they get to the end of the tour, and the tour takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours if they're real art people that are want to talk about the art practices of the different artists and things, but about 2 hours in general. And I mean, the spaces are oppressive. They're dark, and they're so tiny. And the whole idea for me of taking my gallery into a nomadic phase was to make things more about an experience and to put artists' work in a more relevant setting. So this is particularly strong, this exhibition, because I want people to feel the spaces. And during my research, what I kind of came like what kept coming to me was just how important a creative practice is to people who are incarcerated. Also, just like finding something that you can focus on over 20 years or something like that, when you're in a small space that with someone, all of the cells in this case are double cells. They're very tiny. There's nowhere to sit. There's a toilet that is right beside the bunk beds. So only one person at a time could be actually doing any exercise, or
you could stand up.
You
could sit on the toilet, but you couldn't sit anywhere else.
Right, exactly.
It's
so
that
the
thin.
spaces are shocking, and I think that one of the things that is really important to sort of think about is that once people go into incarceration, they become invisible. And one of the group shows that I've put together, actually Teddy Craig has put together, and it is of currently incarcerated people. And I've titled it Invisible Nation because basically we've got something like 2 million people behind bars in America. And I just find that figure astounding.
It does seem incredibly high, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of appalling. But anyway, the whole idea of this exhibition is for people to experience the spaces, and they are having very visceral responses to see artwork that's connected to this situation of incarceration. But also to get conversations started, like people need to understand and start talking about what's going on and why, people are disappearing for such a long time in this country. And also just, the sort of lack of rehabilitation. And so for me, after interviewing lots of formerly incarcerated people, I just understood that, that creative practice or some form of focus, whether it's like learning the law or a garden, gardening or poetry,
right.
That has been super important to them.
In reading a little bit about this, I came across the name of Sean Griffin, who
Yes.
I have met many times over the years, and in fact, many years ago, went into a prison with him to do a story about him teaching poetry classes. And
Right.
so I was at the Northern Nevada Correctional Center with Sean, watching him, recording him teaching a poetry class, and then was walked out. His class continued. I was given a walk back to the entrance by one of the inmates, and in a very big empty courtyard, and walking through there thinking about this as, in how some people are living in here. And this person who's walking me to the exit doesn't get to exit. And this poetry was clearly important to all of the people in this class. They were focused and intense, and they enjoyed it. And then as I'm reading a little bit about this, I saw a quote, I forget from who, but some of the people, maybe one of the former classmates, had said that poetry saved his life.
Yes.
Poetry in prison saved his life, and that was a powerful thing to read.
Yeah. Actually, a few of the guys Sean's been amazing. He really, really helped me with all of the poetry exhibition, because there is a group exhibition of his former students that is poetry, which is cut out of laser cut from old cardboard boxes, and with light behind. And he's just been amazing. I mean, for 30 years, he went into the correctional center and taught poetry. And when I was interviewing these guys, they literally told me that Sean Griffin saved their life and poetry saved their life. So, that came up several times. And I was, I was amazed, but it makes total sense, it's dangerous to kind of show any vulnerability, I think, when you're in that situation.
Sure.
And he basically made a very safe space where people could process what they're thinking and how they're feeling in a different way. It's like learning a new language that is a safe place to kind of think about the world and your place in it.
Allow yourself to have the kinds of thoughts that you can't express in any other part of your day,
right?
Except internally.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't know the language, how do you, how do you actually do that?
How do you express yourself?
You're just burying more and more and more emotions and things that are happening, and it's not healthy.
So for people who come to the exhibit, how does that display present itself to us as we're walking through?
I've been really, really surprised, actually, because the poetry, people have actually just stood and read every single poem. I think there's something like 15. Some of them are not short, and they're very, they're so heartfelt. And every time, people literally, there's a few that people literally cry at. And they just, it's a different one that will catch people at different times. But because I've spent so much time with all of these poems, I've had different reactions at different times. So I've had very intense reactions to, some of them at one time or another. But they're basically, they're suspended in front of, in the maximum security block, they're suspended in front of the windows there, which are opaqued, and you can sort of see that, the distance of vision is being cut down. The different tiers of incarceration, reduces and restricts more and more and more. The opaque windows mean that they don't ever get to see the sky. They don't. Their vision is so enclosed. So this poetry is a mind-expanding thing, and I've used cardboard all the way through the exhibition as a kind of thematic, a consistent item to draw it all together, because I feel like art supplies become really, really precious
right. It's a commodity there, right?
It is, yeah, and also depending on the wardens. Depends on whether you can have access to art supplies. Okay. So places like Lovelock, I can see that the guys have more access to art supplies. So in the Invisible Nation exhibition, the guys from Lovelock have canvas and oil paint, whereas the Northern Nevada Correctional Center guys are working with colored pencil and paper, I guess, but. So anyway, the cardboard thing is sort of about, how precious these things become. Cardboard becomes like a useful art supply, and basically you're living in a box, but you also when you come out, your life fits in a cardboard box, and you have to start all over again. So so it's kind of a thematic thing, and the poetry has just had really strong reactions.
I can imagine. So what other kinds of art can people see going through this exhibit?
Well, the 7 solo shows are varied artworks. Jennifer Garza-Quinn is a photographer based in Texas, and she has photographs of ruined mugshots that she found when she was crawling around basically in an abandoned police station in Detroit. And everyone's IDs and mugshots and information was just all over the floor in this abandoned building. So she photographed it kind of topographically and has blown these photographs up, and they're very huge, and they're displayed in the bullpen of the maximum security area. And then Glenn Cartledge, I was talking about before, former criminal defense lawyer.
Right.
She has oil paintings, and she has these oil paintings of carceral cloths, she calls them. And she's basically developed her own language of symbolic things that are related to incarceration. I have Lisa Jarrett's work in the barber's cell, and she's from Portland. Her work is all centered around care and a lot to do with hair. And so she has, she's African American, and was talking about how different it is, the hair, the things that you do with hair and care of hair and products that you need and things like that. So all of her work is sort of thinking about that, and she got very excited about the barber's cell.
Just striking me. There's just a single cell with a barber chair in it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so she has basically made these incredible weavings of hair, and she's made an installation. Like the whole walls are all these panels with impossible escape plans just woven from hair, and it's
sounds incredible.
It's really beautiful. The artist who I first started this whole exhibition with is Giampiero Assumma, and he's one of the artists that I represent. He is a photographer from Naples, and he spent 10 years going into the criminal psychiatric prisons in Naples, which don't exist anymore. But he spent 10 years photographing the spaces and the people in there, and they're really, really intense but very heartfelt photographs.
I believe I saw one of those photos. If I'm not mistaken, it was a person behind bars with some kind of not a mask, but some kind of a hood or some sort of painted bag or a sheet over the face.
I think it's a face cloth or something, and they've drawn eyes and mouth on. Yeah, they've drawn a face onto it and they're just behind the bars.
Yeah, it's striking.
It's really
strong. It makes you look twice.
Yeah, it's very haunting. Who else have I got? I've Roman DeSalvo is a ceramicist, and he's made these beautiful. They're like swallow nests, and they're ceramic pieces that are like the colonies that swallows make under bridges and things like that. But he's made them out of ceramics, and they are up in one of the guard races in the maximum security, and they're beautiful. He's thinking about how we colonize, how we cluster together, how we inhabit small confined spaces, and how one nest kind of impacts another nest. So really, really interesting work. And then I have Kevin Barron, who is an artist from the UK who was imprisoned for making the artwork for LSD Blotter. And he is a printmaker. his degrees are in printmaking, and he makes these very, very obsessive, very like intricate designs that were originally put on bought by dealers and put on LSD blotter. And
I never thought of that business for a dealer to go and shop for the right design.
I know it's a lot of information that I wasn't aware of.
I must admit I'm clueless, and so this is fascinating.
Yeah, so he has given me some designs, some of the designs which he's enlarged up to like a meter by a meter. I guess it's a yard-ish by a yard, and the designs have enlarged really, really well.
Okay.
But and it's in tiny, tiny squares, and with large patterns over the top or large images. But he was telling me that the artwork designates the batch, the dealer, the kind of trip you're going to have and things like that. So
wow, okay.
Also the little each tiny square is something that apparently you focus on, and then it leads you into whatever kind of psychological
so the art
trip
is
you're going to
intended to
take.
actually affect the user in a way.
Exactly. So it's got, there's a lot of meaning behind it. And he's actually a proponent for the use of LSD still, even today.
Okay.
But while he was in prison, he actually made collages. He was allowed to alter his prison-issued razor, and he spent a lot of time in his cell just cutting out magazines. This, I guess, is in the 80s. And when there was a lot of magazines.
When magazines still existed?
Yes, yeah. So he's made these incredible collages, and that is another part of the artwork in there. I also have an installation of Sean Griffin's work, which are the poems are printed on vellum, and they're kind of see-through, but they're from his latest book, The No Charity in the Wilderness. And he's basically made word portraits of some of the guys that he taught. So that sort of ties in with, his installation. You can walk around and read the poems. They're human size. They're almost like a little crowd of people who are together, isolated but not. So it's really, really nice.
I'm picturing it now and wondering if my imagination is accurate. I can find out by going to see this exhibit.
Yes.
I should ask, how can people see it?
On the Melhop Gallery website, there's an exhibition page. And on that exhibition page is a button for booking a tour. And you can see the dates that are available through that. But also I'm open to making special group tours when, at other times when, people can...
Okay.
We can coordinate it. So that would just be, emailing through that website.
So what's the website address?
Is melhopgallery.com.
melhopgallery.com. So that's step one. And so there are dates on the calendar that are available, but also if they email you directly, then you may be able to arrange for something else that's not explicitly on the calendar already.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
it does
you.
take a long time to actually open up the prison and get everything, get all the electrics and things going. So I do need a little bit of lead time.
Understood. I did visit that prison once years ago for another story, video production. I was the videographer with a reporter who took a tour, and I honestly can't remember anymore what the subject was. It might have been about executions. I'm not sure, but we did visit that room, and I was in that room with the door closed, and it does create an effect on the mind.
Yeah, it's really strong. I when I was photographing in 2020, a friend of mine asked me to photograph in the prison for some research that she was doing, and that's what started this whole thing off. It's just that I became aware of this space, but that room is it's dark. They've actually put the photographs of the executed people there in the outside viewing room of that execution chamber, which makes it even more kind of intense.
That would be even more disturbing. That wasn't there when I visited because it was still active as a prison then.
Right.
But I remember being in the middle of that chamber and realizing that there's a nearly 360-degree glass window around you for viewing, which is also a macabre thing to consider that people would want to come and view. But I understand, families of victims probably need that closure. Anybody else, I don't know if I could understand that, but that's each their own.
That's a very hard space.
To each their own. You don't have any of your own art in this exhibit, correct?
I don't know.
But you are an artist in your own right, and so I'd like to, before we run out of time, just touch on that. What kind of art do you do yourself? How do you describe yourself as an artist?
It's changing a little at the moment. I was a fashion photographer for about 25 years and was working in editorial fashion for different magazines in Europe and Australia. And when I came here, I met my husband and we married, and I came here, and being out of like a major city, I went back to school and did my master's, and have now, like, my photography is taking a bit of a back step. It's basically more for documenting all the gallery things. But I've been doing printmaking and stitching into these prints. So I've been making large-scale pressure prints of dresses of my friends who have. I asked them for dresses that were that meant a lot to them, something that had a lot of history and was very meaningful to them. And I pressure printed them and then have stitched women's bodies onto the top of that. And they just basically suspend in space, and they're a bit different, but they are still feeling a bit photographic. So there's some weird X-ray kind of quality to the print, the actual monotype print.
Are those on display anywhere?
Not at the moment. I just had a show in Zurich, and that I had all of them up there. So they were just basically in a warehouse kind of gallery, just suspended, and people could walk around, and they sway with the movement of the air, and they feel like they're alive. So yeah, it's a new move, but it's still like clothing. It's still women. It's still
right.
It's sort of just a next transition step through.
Are there any images on your website from that exhibit?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because I would like to see now that you describe it. I would like to see it. So that's Melhop Gallery.
Actually, well, I am on there, but my own website is francis-melhop.art. So
okay, francis-melhop.art to see the pieces you're just describing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. The time flies. We could talk for another half an hour easily, but I do I want to respect your time. So you mentioned, I mentioned at the beginning that you have sort of abandoned the traditional gallery setting and you're doing what you're calling nomadic galleries. Can you describe how that works?
Yeah, I think I established the gallery just before COVID, and this was a physical location at Elk Point at Lake Tahoe, and it worked really, really well while COVID was going, because all the people from the city had come to the lake and were hiding out and needed some culture, and I was working in a by appointment basis. Once COVID kind of finished, a few years later, I noticed that people just didn't have it in their habit in Lake Tahoe to go to a gallery. It's just not in your day-to-day thing. So I decided to take this transition period and go completely nomadic. And put the artist's work into spaces that are much more relevant to the actual theme and conceptual base of their work. So the first one was in an opium den in Truckee.
Wow.
In the old Chinese herb shop. And It's actually HSH Interiors now. They use it as a design office, but it's the last standing Chinese building in Truckee on the river there, and it has the original opium den under the floor. So we put Mia Hannon's work in there, and Mia's work is she's thinking about mortality and like just how the body changes to become into the ether, and all of her work she's actually drawing with this sort of a candle. So her easel is basically suspended above her, and she's drawing with a candle and letting the soot make the marks on the paper.
Wow.
So it all kind of, it all just made total sense. And so then the next one was at the rec center in Truckee, and that was all very environmental work. This following exhibition, there's been things in between in different spaces, but this particular one, it just grew and grew and grew. Giampiero's work was, the first one that I just put together, needed to be experienced within these confined spaces.
Yeah, the prison exhibit needed.
Yeah, and then as I worked with the Preservation Society, I was just asking for more and more spaces, and each time I found another artist, and asked them, can I expand? So it's about. I also realized that after COVID, people wanted an experience more than just they needed like to actually feel more than just visual sight.
Right,
it had to be something
almost
else.
Reconnecting with the tactile world in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. They needed sort of every sense kind of activated in a way, and this exhibition really does that. So,
well, it's fascinating to talk about, and now I would like to see it. So, as I'm sure people listening would. So, before we go, one more time, how can people see the exhibit?
They can go to melhopgallery.com and find the exhibition page, which is Far Beyond the Walls. And on that exhibition page is lots and lots of information about the show, but also a button that you can click and get to a calendar, which will you can book a tour through.
Beautiful. And this exhibit recently expanded into October.
Yeah, we extended it. We managed to extend it for another couple of weeks. So it finishes on the 12th of October. That will be the last tour date.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, everybody who's listening who wants to go, make it happen, because you're not going to see anything like this anywhere else.
No, it's
intense.
Thank
you. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming in and talking about it.
Thank you.
Before we go, I want to remind everybody to watch Artifacts on PBS Reno via broadcast or live stream on pbsreno.org or by the YouTube channel. Also, read Art Views at pbsreno.org. And if you have a question or maybe a comment or a suggestion for a future guest or subject, send them to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. My thanks to Francis Melhop, and I say thank you for listening to PBS Reno Arts.